Hey there, everyone, and welcome to a very, very special edition of the Incidentally Reliable podcast, where we peek into a guest journey, talk about their maneuvered nightmares, battle-tested engineering innovations, and their opinions on the current state of space. Today, we have someone who has changed how engineers build, test, and deploy software throughout the world. We have Solomon Hykes, who is a co-founder of Docker, every developer's favorite whale app, and more recently, Dagger, a powerful programmable CI/CD that helps developers and DevOps engineers alike run their pipelines in containers. Solomon, it's such a pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much for taking out your time.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're doing this in the backdrop of KubeCon Europe. It's a pretty busy last day. Solomon just had his keynote, which was fully booked out. I had to stand in the very back and try to, squint my eyes to see him. But yeah, Solomon, how's KubeCon been for you so far?
Great. Yeah, very, very busy. It's in France. It's in Paris. I'm from Paris. So reconnecting with a lot of old friends. And we've been 10 years into the container and cloud native movement. So a lot of reconnections and reunions. Yeah. It's a great time.
Yeah. So how do you balance your time? You always have to be in touch with this ecosystem. A lot of this has been shaped by your actions. So how do you balance your time, keeping in touch with the trends and your responsibilities at Dagger?
Oh, well, most of the time I'm focused on Dagger and the Dagger community. That we're an open source community. Everything we do is community first. We have a Discord server where we just work. We spend all of our days, working with the community. And a lot of that community, the Dagger community, overlaps with the broader cloud native community. There's also data scientists, application developers, but there's a lot of cross-pollination. So by focusing on Dagger, I end up staying in touch with quite a few, cloud native people also.
All right, that's pretty great. And Docker was started in 2008 as .cloud, if I'm correct.
That's right, yeah. It started in France. Then we moved to the Bay Area, in 2010. Then pivoted to Docker 2013.
Yeah. So that was at PyCon, right? You demoed it the first time at the PyCon.
Yeah, 2013 at PyCon we had a lightning talk, and we showed a not yet released version of Docker. Yeah. And we expected a small room in the back with 30 people, that were interested in this weird technology. And what I didn't know is PyCon used to do, maybe they still do, lightning talks in the main room. So there were several hundred people there.
Yeah.
And turns out that they got really excited.
Of course.
And we ended up launching 2 weeks later.
2 weeks later.
Yeah. Yeah, because someone posted it on Hacker News. We had this unfinished website.
Okay.
But we were not ready to launch, and someone launched it for us on Hacker News, and it was there all day. And people were saying, it sounds great, but it's vaporware, it's not open source. Yeah. So we thought, oh, quick, we got to launch it. So we just sprinted and, put it out there as fast as we could. Yeah.
All right, in 2013. And from your inception to pivot, is there something that you would have done differently now that you've been
so many things.
So many things.
Yeah, I think I would have taken things less personally in general. There's a lot of ups and downs in a startup, a lot of ups and downs in an open source community.
Of course.
But it's only code.
Yeah.
So, I love this technology. I love building things, and so sometimes you can get very emotional and you can identify with the things you're building.
Yeah.
Like if you're building a Lego castle, and someone tells you, I don't like your Lego castle, and you get really upset, So, now I think I'm older. I've learned to just enjoy the positive and ride the negative, knowing things will get better.
Ignore all the Mac complainers that spam your site every day.
Everyone's always upset about something, I complain about things.
Yeah.
So, that's the main thing I would have done differently, is just try to do that from the start. It's more fun that way.
That's a very, very relatable advice, especially in this atmosphere. But, Docker was definitely a lot more successful than you could have probably imagined. So at what point was it abundantly clear to you that, yes, you built something that's going to change how every engineering team is going to build software from now on?
Well, there's part of your brain, part of my brain at least, it was very clear to me that this was the right architecture, the right way to do it. But that brain was inside a very young and inexperienced person who had no clue what it meant to get the world to adopt a new product. And so it was just an abstract concept that this feels right, And then it was just many years of just struggling to get anyone to care. No one cared,
Of course.
But I think around this PyCon presentation, when I something qualitatively was different, the reaction of people was very different. They said, "Oh, that's very exciting to me," and it was surprising to me because it felt like, okay, I've been doing this container thing for 5 years now. Different iterations, different versions, different ways of packaging it, but still the same tech. But it's this iteration that blew up, and you never know what's this one change that seems like a detail to you, but from the outside world, it changes everything.
Of course. Yeah, and like before you know it, you were like the top player in this industry. Docker was synonymous with containers for a while. I have to agree. So now that people aren't watching every step that you make, you were setting standards for a while. Do you feel more liberated at Dagger now to innovate and?
Yeah, I mean it's always fun working on a new project with a smaller team. We launched Dagger 2 years ago. And we've been building up this community and sort of building with them. And it started out as a very niche community. I think now in the last 6 months, it's really started to pick up steam. More people, more adoption. But it's still the phase where it's at a human scale. Everyone in the community sort of knows each other. Maybe not anymore, really, but it feels like the early days of the Docker community. And I really love that phase. You can move really fast. And you can try crazy things and see if people like it or not. And, you don't have this pressure to carefully steer the battleship, so I like moving fast. I like the early days.
Of course. And like from the early days, Docker grew from a developer tool to a production workouts entirely. How did you architect the Docker engine in particular to handle millions of concurrent container instances at one time?
Which engine? Sorry.
The Docker engine?
Yes. I wasn't sure if you were asking about Dagger, but it's the same answer for both. We didn't at the beginning. Because we were just trying things, and then we were taken by surprise by the rapid success of that particular prototype. And then people will just take that and take it to production before we thought it was ready. We would say, oh, we should wait a little bit before running this in production. This is in the early days, right?
Of course.
But they would do it anyway. And they would say, yeah, we'll figure it out. Because the benefits of the capabilities of containers outweighed, the unfinished, the paint not being dry yet. For some workloads, not all workloads. And then basically we spent years just catching up to the community. Just stabilizing, scaling, refactoring as fast as we could. A good example is Docker build. The Docker file was just a hack, just an experiment that I added after launching Docker. It wasn't in the original version, no. But we thought, oh, you can do this now. You can run you can run one command in a container and snapshot, another command, snapshot, etc. Oh, what if we just made that a feature? So we just put it out there. It was really, taped together. It was really a hack. But then it became really popular, and so we just had to fix it. And eventually, we hired some. Over the years, we hired some amazing engineers. And and they would say, okay, I'm going to refactor this. I'm going to make it more robust. And so, in this case, we built BuildKit, which was a completely redesigned backend for Docker build. So, but this happened later, right? Over the course of years, you stabilize things that are popular.
And like when you're shipping software that's used by every other Fortune 500 right now, security has to be a topmost concern of you. So, like, how did you establish like a very secure development lifecycle, and like, how did you handle critical security based on Docker? Because Docker, as you mentioned, evolved very incrementally.
Yeah. Well, security is a complicated topic because you're always assessing risk, and risk is all about potential things that could happen in the future, maybe, but you can't protect perfectly against every risk. So you're always making trade-offs, right? You're trying to be pragmatic in what you protect against and at what cost.
Yeah.
And when the appearance of Docker and containers introduced a lot of new variables in this carefully balanced calculation that the security community has to make all the time of what risks to manage, how to manage risks.
Yeah.
And so it's like we just didn't mean to, but we just sort of reshuffled the cards. And so then it was a scramble to figure out, okay, what does it mean to secure applications and infrastructure in this new containerized world? And we just sort of, it was, in a very chaotic way, just sort of figured it out together. And it's difficult because it's potential. There's a subjective element to assessing risk. So sometimes people are very worried about something that objectively others, maybe is not really is an acceptable risk. Some people will find some risks unacceptable. So it started as a conversation. What is an acceptable risk? What is not? And I think now we're a much more mature community.
Of course. We've
figured out the best practices. So things have settled again, just in time for AI to come and reshuffle the cards again.
That's a whole
prompt injection.
So like speaking about community. So the containerization landscape has plenty of players now, and there's some level of fragmentation happening now. There's you've probably heard of Wasm as well. It's been the talk of the town for a while. So like, how did Docker navigate this fragmentation while still maintaining a pretty solid user community that's very vibrant, very helpful to newer users? And is there a similar vision that you're following for Dagger as well?
Yeah, I think with Docker, the adoption was so rapid. It wasn't clear in the beginning how far it would go. Will 100% of all applications always run on Docker? We didn't know. And then Kubernetes came along, and the same question: is everything going to run on Kubernetes? Docker in development, Kubernetes in production. Is it going to be everything? Same question for the cloud. Is everything moving to the cloud, or is it going to be 50%, 10%? Nobody knew. I think now we're realizing, okay, this is a very fragmented world. There isn't going to be one runtime that runs everything. In fact, the fragmentation is only accelerating. Because there's just so much software to build, in in every industry possible. You've got the edge, you got the data center, you got the device. So cloud and on-prem will continue to coexist. Containers, VMs, WebAssembly, JavaScript isolates will continue. Whatever the next thing is, will continue to coexist. Even within the container world, there's 1,000 different distributions of Kubernetes and extensions. So I think Docker's job is to be a good steward of the community they have in their slice of the ecosystem.
Of course.
It's okay to coexist with other runtimes.
Of course.
Dagger was actually built around this insight that it's a fragmented world and you cannot standardize on any one runtime. So what Dagger's approach is to help you standardize on the pipeline that deploys to the runtime.
Of course.
Because if you're an enterprise, you need to standardize on something. And if you can't standardize on Kubernetes or Docker or OpenShift or Lambda or whatever, if you have to embrace the fact that you're always going to be dealing with 10 different things in your enterprise, if you're lucky it's 10, then how do you glue it all together? So our approach is to have a, focus on a very thin slice of the stack, the pipelines, but design something that can actually be ubiquitous. Dagger, our goal is to be able to run any pipeline, ideally every pipeline.
Yeah.
So that's the idea.
And so Docker has been around then for longer than most observability tools that we see around here today are. So like you mentioned that, your team grew very fast. There was a lot of rapid developments. So was there an evolution of observability and monitoring inside the Docker team and ecosystem as well? Like
in the ecosystem,
of course,
sure, a lot of innovation. Basically every segment of the infrastructure stack was completely reinvented around containers, right?
Yeah.
When I started out in systems, you use Nagios to monitor servers, right? And when we built our first container platform in .cloud before spinning it out as Docker, we had all these problems in our little microcosm, right? How do we monitor these containers? They're so dynamic.
Yeah.
And Nagios has to be manually configured for each server. But these are not servers. They're, there's thousands of little containers coming and going. How do you monitor them? So we the generation one was we had a Frankenstein version of Nagios. We, hacked Nagios so that could be dynamic again. Okay. So I think that was the first part.
All right.
Observability, adapting to containers. But now we have all these container native observability tools, and so they started with containers.
Okay.
So it's a given that containers are dynamic. They come and go. So I find it really beautiful that, the containers exist. So now you can build even higher. You can rely on them existing.
So do you think there's a problem that observability tools could solve right now that they're not really solving?
Oh, in the observability space? Well, I don't know. I feel like it's still hard to know what's going on in your system. I think one challenge is that observability tools are there's still a gap between the application world and the infrastructure world. So and observability means two very different things for those two communities. So I think unifying them would be ideal, but it's difficult to unify things, and it's such a fragmented space. I think that's a challenge that's not resolved yet.
Yeah, definitely it is, and that's the sentiment that I've seen echoed in this community and everyone else that I speak to. And that brings me to a question. It's a little embarrassing to say, but around 7 years ago, when I started my development journey, everyone around was talking about Docker. They had the Docker stickers on their laptops, and they had the badges on the bags. And I would ask them, what is Docker? What does it do? And nobody could really explain it to me well. I tried really hard. I spent a lot of hours before, it became clear that, okay, Docker is solving this.
Yeah.
And that means, now that I think back on it, there are still a lot of users who have varying level of technical expertise. So, but on the same hand, Docker's community and your support both have scaled pretty well to handle all of these stratas. So, was there a plan on catering to this varying technical expertise in your users?
You mean catering to different levels of expertise? Yeah, that's something I'm passionate about. Making technology accessible. And simplifying things. And making things simple is very difficult. But it's very scalable to do it, because one team will do the very difficult work of simplifying something. And then everyone else can benefit. So you only have to do the hard work. If something's complex, it's the opposite. It's easy to ship something complicated, but then everyone has to do a lot more work. So if you look at the total amount of work, it's very inefficient. It's more efficient to make things simple, but it's very painful if you're the one who has to do it. So, we just decided to invest a lot of effort in making Docker simple, and then make it simpler over time. When we launched it, it was considered to be very simple. But I think today, if you went back in time and tried the first version of Docker, you would think, this is pretty complicated to set up still. For example, if you have a Mac, and you want to run Docker, in the first version of Docker, you only had the Linux binding, so you had to install a virtual machine. We didn't help you to do that. You had to configure it. You have to choose the Linux distribution for that virtual machine. You have to SSH into it, install Docker, and then use Docker.
Yeah.
And then over time, we invested a lot of design and engineering work just to make that step easier. You know, there's Docker for Mac, Docker for Windows. You click and it works. But that's actually probably one of the most complicated engineering projects that we had internally was, you know, to make that work.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love that it worked. You know,
Yeah.
Same thing for the community itself. You know, the drawings, you know, the comics, the universe that's a little playful with animals and the whale. A lot of people told me, it felt like I belonged here. You know, I'm a beginner. It's my first open source project. It's the beginning of my journey. But it felt like, okay, maybe this is made for me.
Yeah.
As opposed to, I think at the time, a lot of these open source tools for DevOps or cloud, they had a very dry, you know, sort of matrix, you know, dark color patterns.
Yeah.
You know, this is for the super hacker.
Yeah.
But that you're actually excluding a lot of people.
Yeah.
Because they don't think I'm a super hacker. You know, so that I think that helped us also get more users.
Yeah, I definitely understand that. I'd like to talk a little about Docker Hub now.
Mm-hmm.
So the central repository for container images. And, you know, when you have like millions of pushes and pulls every day, like, was there a conscious effort in making it more highly available and scalable?
Yeah, I mean, it was a constant struggle, you know. And Hub existed from the start. It wasn't called Hub. It was called the Docker Index. Then we renamed it to Docker Hub. But that was there from day one.
Yeah.
Because the whole point was it's easy to run something.
Yeah.
But if the first step is, okay, first you need to create your first image. So let's go and template, you know, let's package up your first server image. You know, the bootstrap process is very complicated.
Yeah.
So we wanted the first command to be Docker run of something, and boom, it just happens.
Yeah.
So it was there from the beginning. And, you know, we didn't expect so many people to use it. And so we had a chart in our office of downloads, you know, image downloads. It went, you know, higher and higher. So then, there was over the years, a lot of pretty typical infrastructure scaling bottlenecks and just scrambling to keep up. You know, it is, at the end of the day, just hosting files.
Yeah.
So it's difficult to do it at very large scale.
Yeah.
But it's not as difficult as what we were doing before with .cloud, which was hosting people's applications in production. That was a whole different level of complication. So we were happy to only have to deal with scaling, you know, moving the containers around. Yeah.
I see that. Were there any disaster recovery strategies in place, you know, to bounce back from any outages?
Oh, well, yes. And then, you know, I'm sure now they're much more advanced. But, you know, to be honest, that part I wasn't personally involved in, you know, done it once with the cloud and in my previous jobs.
Yeah.
But then we had an excellent infrastructure team, whole engineering group. And that was abstracted away from me, and I'm very happy about that.
So let's come back to talk more about Dagger now. So you're working on simplifying CI/CD for modern development teams. What is the vision here? Like, how did you stumble upon this idea, or was this something that you've been working on for a while? And what are you working on currently? What's your team working on?
So the idea of Dagger is to reduce the pain of CI pipelines.
Yeah.
That every software team experiences because they're made of scripts and YAML that grow over time in complexity.
Yeah.
And as your application grows, the pipeline becomes more and more of a problem. And someone in the team is a designated DevOps person, and they have to deal with that CI, and their life is difficult.
Yeah.
For example, you can't just easily develop your pipeline locally. You have to push to this black box service and wait for it to tell you if you made a mistake. So the development, if you think of your pipelines as software, the development experience is terrible. So what Dagger does is it lets you take these scripts in YAML and replace them with clean code.
Yeah.
You have these little functions, and each function is like one component of your pipeline. It encapsulates one task, a build, a deployment step, linting, whatever. And then Dagger will give you a nice clean API for these functions, and it will run them in containers.
Yeah.
And it gives you an API to compose them dynamically. And then you start building functions that call other functions, and you start playing Lego.
Yeah.
And so that's what Dagger does.
All right.
It's a simplification of an existing mess.
I was talking to Miranda from your product team a little earlier, and she was mentioning how you guys are working hard on functions.
Yeah.
Yeah. Would you like to talk about that?
Yeah. So that functions were the missing piece of this whole story I'm telling you, and that we launched them last week. They were in development for 6 months.
Yeah.
Because it's open source, we were developing them with the community.
Yeah.
So in fact, a lot of the community has started using functions, Dagger functions.
Yeah.
Over the last few months.
Yeah.
Even though we told them it's not finished yet, but it just we found a really fun development experience. And and if you've ever dealt with the CI pipeline, the word fun is usually not the first word you use.
Never.
But by breaking it down into these small pieces, these functions, and making it very easy to create one function at a time and then connect them, and do that in a programming language that you're already familiar with.
Yeah.
You can write Go, you can write Python, you can write TypeScript.
Yeah.
And also reusing each other's functions across language.
Yeah.
So maybe I like Go, you like Python. I have my own set of functions for my part of the stack.
Yeah.
You have your own set of functions. Now we can compose them into a common pipeline. And the I for CI, it stands for integration. The whole point is you can integrate everything.
Yeah.
But so that requires a way to interconnect things. Yeah. So it's like we all get our Lego sets.
Again,
it's like a Lego building club. There's a table, tons of bricks, and I'm building my thing, and you build your thing, and you're like, oh wow, let's combine it, and we'll make something cooler.
Yeah.
So that's why functions are so important, because they're the Lego brick.
Yeah, and that's a great initiative as well, because that allows you to get more of the community involved again. When you're supporting this ecosystem, and you're getting their help to build a bigger Lego piece, as you mentioned.
Yep.
So I'm really excited to see how that works out.
Me too.
So like coming from reliability, so debugging complex CI/CD failures can be pretty challenging.
Oh, yeah.
Does Dagger do something to help users monitor, diagnose, and troubleshoot their issues?
Yeah, I mean the number one reason it's so hard to debug a CI pipeline is because it's so complicated.
Yeah.
If you simplify it and you break it down into little units of code, now you have access to the entire ecosystem of development tools to help you debug. So if your CI pipeline is made of functions in Go or Python, then you can use Go debugging tools to debug the Go part.
Yeah.
Python debugging tools to debug the Python part.
Yeah.
And if something breaks anywhere, instead of being told something broke, here's the giant mess of scripts, I know it's this function that broke. So now I can use the whole range of software engineering practices. Okay, let me take that component and run it in an isolated environment with maybe some mocked dependencies.
Yeah.
Okay, it works with this version of the database service, but not this version. Okay, I'm gonna iterate that way.
Yeah.
So that's really a difference. Once you make your pipeline code, then you get a real development experience. And developers know all about debugging. Developers are better at debugging than DevOps people.
Definitely.
They have more experience. They have more tools.
Yeah. Any hard lessons you learned at the time at Docker that you're currently, actively leveraging at Dagger?
Oh yeah, many. I'm always mining, my past experience for, lessons.
Yeah.
I don't want to make the same mistakes twice. I want to make new mistakes.
Yeah.
Let's see. I mean, one is, it's okay if not everyone uses you. It's okay if not everyone loves you.
Yeah.
Open source, you're putting your code out there, and anyone can come in and ask for a feature, criticize it, but you can't make everybody happy, so you need to sort of stick to what you think is the right design.
Yeah.
And at the same time, you need to be always listening to users.
Yeah.
So I think the distinction between users and bystanders is very important, because anyone can go on GitHub and complain.
Yeah.
But I don't care if someone is randomly complaining. I really care if a user is complaining.
Yeah.
And so making the difference is really important. And I think with Docker, in the beginning, me personally, I made the mistake of, if anyone complained at any time, I just wanted them to be happy.
Yeah.
But again, that's not a realistic goal.
Of course.
So that's one lesson. And there's many
There you go.
others. Yeah.
So Solomon, it's been great chatting with you. So you've had a long and exciting career right at the cutting edge of innovation, and I'm sure that you have a fair share of war room stories and nightmares that you guys have dodged, and they've never seen the light of the day, and we'd love to hear a few of them.
Sure. Nightmare stories? Let's see. Well, back when we were on .clouds, we were hosting people's applications, and it was the early days of AWS. We were a thin layer on top of EC2, really. Yeah. And they were still figuring things out. They had a lot of outages, sometimes some load balancing issues.
Yeah.
And when they had issues, we were stuck. We couldn't do anything, But then our customers would complain to us, and it was very difficult to say, we can't do anything right now. I think one time, there was a combination of an issue in AWS and a bug in our service mesh, you would call it now. It was an early prototype of that. And for a few minutes, our router sent traffic to the wrong applications.
Yeah.
And so people out there would visit a website and they would see another website. That's, I think, the worst thing that ever happened on the production side.
Okay.
The postmortem of that one was very very rich and interesting. Other nightmare stories, I don't know. I have to think a little more, but.
Absolutely. Is there something that you've learned in particular from these stories that still keeps haunting you back and back?
Yeah, I think especially when you're working on a startup, it's an emotional roller coaster.
Yeah.
So whenever there's a problem, you feel like it's the end of the world.
Yeah.
But I remember worrying about competitors so much.
Yeah.
And I was telling a story to a friend who was, which competitors? And I realized I don't remember any of their names because most of them are long gone.
Yeah.
Because it's really hard to make a startup succeed, and so most of them fell along the way. So just by still being around, even though you have all these problems, you're kind of winning, So not worrying too much about competition definitely is a good lesson. Caring, you can never care too much about users.
Yeah.
Most of the features we're shipping now, it's someone in our community asked for it last year, or a month ago, maybe. So yeah.
Solomon, it's been great chatting with you once again. Thank you so much for taking out your time. Co-founder of Docker and Dagger. Dagger is a CI/CD, a programmable CI/CD engine that helps DevOps engineers make their pipelines into code. Do check that out. And see you guys in the next episode.